Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health. My name is Josh, and I'm going to be flying solo today, but I'm joined by another Josh. He is the rhythm guitarist of the New York heavy metal band Paradigms. They've been on our LA 92 episode for Victims and Villains. What is going on, sir?
What's poppin'? I'm glad to be here, man. Always good to be in the company of a fellow Josh.
Yeah, you feel like you can never go wrong. There is a festival that they do somewhere in the Midwest, and it's a gathering the entire world. Everyone that is named Kyle gets to come to this. And they just celebrate the
Interesting.
fact that they all have the name Kyle.
There's something for Joshes too. I saw that there was a whole group chat made of like all the Joshes on Facebook, and they're like, there can only be one. Let's meet up on this date and let's battle it out. And the winner gets to keep the name, and everyone else has to change their name.
Just imagine that kind of like goes over like everyone storming Area 51 where everyone talks a big game and then no one shows up.
Right. I think they showed up and it was all hugs and laughter. That's how
Yeah.
Joshes are. We're chill.
Well, I'm really excited to have you back. I love Paradigms. Is you guys are um one of the bands that I love to kind of just see and hear on social media. I know we were talking a little bit before the show. You guys are working on a full length. We're gonna hear the second single, Stains, from you guys. But tell us a little bit about Paradigms and what we can expect with this upcoming full length.
For sure, man. Well, Paradigms is a Christian metalcore slash gent, whatever you want to call it, band. We like to genre bend. Um, as you can hear on our second single, Stains, we like to stick to our roots. You know, we're from New York City, so we like to infuse drill and rap into our music. In our upcoming album, it's a full length. There's 11 tracks. We're gonna have some remixes too, so there's probably gonna be more than 11 tracks. But just expect a lot of different sounds, a lot of different genres being blended together. We got some black metal riffs. We got some piano stuff. We're gonna have some Middle Eastern type stuff. It's gonna be interesting. We touch on topics like, mental health, things that go on in the church that shouldn't be going on in the church, and just a general expression of our faith and who we are.
It's one of the things that I really like about Paradigms is the fact that that you guys are a Christian band in a largely secular scene where it like we talked about this before we started recording. I think when both of us got in the scene, like it was this like very like I just felt like very split. Like you had bands that were heavy in this secular scene that some Christians would listen to. Then you had scenes that were bands that were juggernauts in the Christian scene that also happen to be really large. And I feel like nowadays it's you primarily get the former, which I have a lot of secular bands that I listen to. I mean, that I'm friends with as well. So like, but I always think it's really interesting when you have a Christian band that's kind of stepping into that largely secular world.
Right. I mean, it's not in the metal scene, surprisingly, people are very accepting of,
Sure.
people from all walks of life, even more so than in the church, I would say sometimes, so we haven't had an issue at all, assimilating into the culture. People respect what we do. We respect what they do. We share our message and, we just try to spread love in the scene, and that's what's happening.
That's awesome. And I also like just kind of going back to what you're talking about in terms of like the sound of Paradigms, where it's mostly metalcore, but then you have those like gent influences and like hip hop influences and can you kind of talk about the process of writing a song? Like how do you guys infuse so many different sounds to be a
Okay.
cohesive track.
Word. So some songs start off with just like a riff that somebody sends in the group chat and then we bounce it back and forth and build upon it. Um, but some songs we specifically set aside and are like, okay, we want, a drill song, we want a jazz song, we want a J-pop song, and then we yeah, exactly.
All
And then
right.
we kind of just start bouncing around ideas to infuse metal with that specific sound. And once we get something we all agree with, we start building upon it. And it's a really fun process. I love writing with these guys. Everyone's like super creative and everyone contributes.
Well, I think anytime that you bring in like a hip hop influence and kind of mesh it with it, especially from like a vocal style, it's always like really interesting to kind
Mm,
of talk about because I mean, from someone that listens to almost exclusively metalcore, like so much of those words are like enunciated. You have like highs and you have lows, but anytime you infuse a lot of that like hip hop and rap influence, I mean, you speed up the process essentially. Is it trickier to like write parts around like those type of influences?
Um, I guess for me it would be because I recently got into like rap and hip hop like a few years ago. It's not something I grew up listening to, so I had to do some research. Like for Stains, we have like a kind of rap part, and I wrote that melody, but our drummer showed me Scarlord, which is a like a UK drill rapper.
Nice.
And he like also does like metal with drill, kind of, but not to the degree that, we wanted to hear. That's why we made Stains, because nobody's doing that. Um, but yeah, it was a little tricky because, I'm not that much into rap. But with some research and bouncing it off other people, you show rappers that and they're like, oh, this is tough. Maybe if you do this, it'll sound better. So yeah, just getting influence from other people, showing it to people, and getting feedback always helps you get the best product that you can get.
It's always really interesting to have conversations about writing with people that are in the like creating metal music
Mm,
because when you ask them like what they're listening to, like chances are they're not like listing off these like a lot of like metal. At least
mm.
the friends that I have that are still active in the scene, like they'll talk about, yeah, like I like BTS and Blackpink or
Yeah, yeah.
I listen to Wu-Tang or Ice Cube, and like you're just kind of like talking about like these things that you normally wouldn't hear, you wouldn't expect, like being like very
Right,
heavy, but like listening to very like upbeat pop music.
right. I think do you listen to Rings of Saturn?
I don't listen to them regularly, but I know who you're referring to.
Okay. So they did a cover of No Pity for a Coward by Suicide Silence. And at the end of that song, there's like an interview clip from Mitch Lucker. And he's saying that, you know, I don't listen to metal because if I listen to metal, I'm gonna sound like everyone else. But I don't want to sound like everyone else. I want everyone else to sound like me. But then he was like, I listen to Rings of Saturn. Those dudes are dope or whatever, which was cool. But yeah, it's true. If you end up only listening to metal, you're only gonna be getting ideas from other metal bands, and you're just gonna end up sounding like everyone else. And in my opinion, that's what's happening in the metalcore scene. Like it's kind of stale. Everyone kind of sounds the same. So it's important to me to always branch out into other genres and listen to other things. So like me and our drummer Gabe and our bassist Hasiel are super into like jazz and like indie funk and stuff like John
Yes.
Coltrane, Lewis Cole,
Mhm.
people like that.
Yeah, I've gotten into jazz a lot more in the last few years. My some of my favorite things to listen to like outside of like the metalcore are like you mentioned jazz. I love Ice Cube is one of my favorite artists of all time. I love NWA. I love listening to like movie scores and stuff like that. It just
Mm,
I feel like I'm an enigma when it comes to music.
that's great, man.
No one can quite nail it down. So this you guys are currently working on the you like you said like the full length. Do we have like a like projected release date or like goals that you guys are shooting for in terms of that, or are you guys just kind of letting it like flow whenever it comes out, it comes out?
Man, I wish I knew. The date got pushed back so many times because of so many external things that we can't control. So we're kind of just going with the flow, taking our time with it. Because this has, taken so long. It's been like 2 years since we released our last single. We don't want to rush the process, We just want to make sure that what we deliver when we finally deliver it will be at the highest quality possible. Everything sounds good. Um, Hopefully sometime this year. I would say fall. End of summer is wishful thinking, but it's a lot of songs, so I doubt it. I don't want to, put that in the air, but probably sometime in fall.
That's awesome.
But you'll
Yeah,
you'll definitely get some singles before that.
I'm really excited. And you guys are getting ready to hit the road for your guys' first tour this upcoming
Yes.
summer. You guys are going on the road with Gannon. Am I saying that name right? From
Yes.
Massachusetts?
Gannon.
And so like I think you guys are going to build up a lot of that anticipation. You guys are playing here in the city of which I live, and I'm super excited about it. And I've got like friends that like are going to that show, so like I'm
That's what's
excited
up.
to get to see you guys live, and I'm excited for you guys to really branch out because I always feel like you said like metalcore nowadays kind of feels a little like stale, like I feel like you get like little nuggets here and there, but like overall like it's not what it was 10 years ago.
Right.
And to like see like bands like Paradigms that are using together multiple different genres and kind of creating something original. I'm really excited to see that. And I think it makes for a really awesome live experience too.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's cool. And we only got two songs out right now. And our set is usually what, 25, 30 minutes. So you're definitely going to be hearing a lot of new stuff and a lot of old stuff that you might recognize, but that has changed quite a bit. So I'm excited for people to hear that stuff.
Well, that's awesome. So you guys are that tour starts off July 7th and will go until July 16th. You guys essentially have 2 weekend runs in there.
Yep. Yes.
Um So you guys, I have the schedule pulled up. You guys are going to Plattsburgh, New York on the 7th. Uh I, Rhode Island on the 8th. I can't pronounce that city.
I think it's Cheapshay or something.
Yeah, I'll
Something
just
like
go for that.
that.
Uh Worcester in Massachusetts. I suck at names on the 8th, the 9th. You guys are gonna be in Jersey, in Elwood Park, New Jersey on the 14th, Richmond, Virginia on the 15th, Brooklyn on the 16th of July. Make sure that you guys follow the Paradigms for all the updates when they'll be there. Where can people find you online before we jump into the movie?
You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Our name is prdgms.nyc. That's also our website, prdgms.nyc. We had to snatch that. No .com for us. .nyc.
There you go. All right. Well, you guys can find the links in the show notes below. We're going to be talking about you have brought us our very first anime, and that is 1997's Perfect Blue. This will be a companion piece because our network uh brother sister show Animind also covered this. We'll provide a link in the show notes below. Uh I'm not an anime guy whatsoever. So I've had people tell me that I need to see this movie for years. So I'm glad that you guys are into anime because I never would have watched this movie otherwise. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and jump into this. So if you guys haven't seen Perfect Blue, it's now streaming on Shudder, and I believe a couple other services. So go check it out. Um, But yeah, what's your experience with this movie? What kind of relationship do you have with it?
It was quite a ride.
Mm.
Um,
Yes, it was.
what I knew about Perfect Blue before I saw it was one, it was made by Satoshi Kon, who is a very he's like a mastermind. He's a genius, and he only has a few films out, before he passed. But what he has out is amazing, and I knew that a lot of A-list Hollywood films actually took big influence from Perfect Blue, so I knew it was going to be a banger. Like Black Swan, for instance. Black Swan is very, very heavily influenced by Perfect Blue, so I knew it was going to be a banger. Um, it's trippy, man. At some points, I was very confused, um, because the film likes to blend fantasy with reality, so you don't really know what's real. Um, and it's just like a masterful manipulation of the mind.
Yeah, this was a first time viewing for me, and you talked about like the Hollywood influences. I also know that I'm a big Nolan fan, and so like
Mm,
Inception, I've
yeah.
heard people say for like years this was one of his like influences for Inception. I kept waiting for it. I was like, all right, like when are we getting into the trippy stuff? And you get into like the back half of this movie, and it is so hard to discern what is reality, what is a dream, like what is the actual universe that we know from the beginning. And I absolutely love stories like that because I feel like if you can make me question my own sanity as a viewer, that's not only the signs of like good storytelling, but also at the same time is like that's a movie that's gonna make me like come back for like repeat viewings because like
Oh yeah.
trying to like figure out like all right like what does this mean what are we going with here does this have a bigger significance than just this kind of like throwaway line.
Yeah, you need the whole like web map in your room on the wall. Spread.
Yeah, you have like a murder board and it's just trying to figure out what Perfect Blue is all about.
Right, exactly.
But I think one of the things that I really liked about this movie is just it's I think for me sometimes the reason that I don't always gravitate towards anime is because I don't want to say that like I think the anime that I've come into maybe I've just come into contact with the wrong type of anime where it always kind of feels very lighthearted and very kind of goofy and silly
Mm.
and just kind of really wacky. And that's not the kind of like stories that I like to be around. Like I like to be engaged by stories that are telling these like deeper truths or like these profound themes. And part of the reason that I love Ghost in the Shell so much is because that film is just riddled with these themes of like identity, mortality, the afterlife, these really like deep themes that like really challenge the viewer. That's one of the things that I really liked about Perfect Blue is the fact that you are essentially trying to like answer this question of like what is happiness or um does is my identity wrapped up in what I do, like all of these like really just deep philosophical questions that I feel like we don't really talk about as much as we should, and especially when you're talking about in terms of mental health, something that all of us feel these are questions that more of us need to be asking.
Right. Exactly. Before we jump deeper into Perfect Blue, you mentioned that you're looking for anime that is, a little bit more adult, let's say,
Sure.
right? Touches on adult topics, big boy topics, not just, the power of friendship. Um,
Yeah,
one of the biggest mainstream ones right now is Attack on Titan. Um, I don't know if you've seen it.
I have. Attack on Titan is one of the very
Okay.
few that I've tried, and I got through, I think, the first
Mm.
I got through like the first season, and I've also read I think the first three volumes of the manga. So
Okay.
like I do have some connection to that one, but I've never actually sat down and finished it.
Yeah, bro. It gets wild. Major curveballs are thrown. I feel like you would enjoy it before we move on. Just had to throw that in there.
All
It
right,
probably
well,
solidified itself as one of my top.
all right, that's awesome. Like it's what, four seasons? Is that
It's
correct?
4 seasons, and then the final season part one, and then the final season part two, and then the final season part three is coming out soon.
Okay.
It's just they keep dragging it, but it's the ending is crazy. Um, but yeah, Perfect Blue.
Yeah, one of the things
um,
that go ahead, like before like we jump into the deeper things, like I just want to know like why are the Power Rangers in like the first like opening shot of this movie? Like I had to like double take. I was like backed out of my app and I was like, did I click the wrong movie? And like hit play again. I was like, oh, cool. It's specifically Power Rangers Zeo. I don't know what they are
right.
in Super Sentai, but like I was like, this is weird. All right. I guess I'm here for the strange.
Yeah, I sent a link to the group chat so everyone could watch it. And our vocalist, Darrell, he saw that scene and he was like, "Oh man, I know I'm gonna love this movie because it's Power Rangers." I'm like, "Bro, just keep watching. It's not about Power Rangers. Trust me." He's a big like Power Rangers fan. He's been wanting us to dress up as Power Rangers on stage for a while.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's like right from the beginning, it throws you a curveball. So it already sets you up for mind failure from the beginning.
Yeah, the sense of like just misdirection that this film uses in its storytelling right from that Power Rangers get-go, but like also I don't know exactly like what the guy's name would be. Mr. They like decided it was like Mr. Meme, the like the blogger dude. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
The
Me
guy that
Mania.
always Me Mania, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, like the stalker, like he's constantly used for like a red herring throughout the entire film. And
Right.
I was like, this is trying to talk about like how an audience like consumes um entertainment and also at the same time like uh views the entertainers as products and not necessarily as people. And I mean there are like terrible horror stories that have ended in absolute tragedy because like
Oh
people have
yeah.
just kind of taken their fandoms too far.
Yeah.
Or we feel entitled. But I liked how they used him as like a misdirect right from the opening of this film.
Yeah, man. People get very wrapped up in parasocial relationships with especially in these days where kind of people I feel like kids these days or people in general don't really look up to like celebrities anymore, like movie stars. Now it's like social media influencers and stuff. But in Japan, it's still very much like J-pop idols and actresses and stuff. So Mimania is not too far off from the reality in countries like that.
But maybe but I was curious, like because here in America, like I mean, you have people like Jennifer Lopez is a great example where she's very successfully crossed over from the world of acting in the singing. Then you also have there's a couple other like artists that have like successfully like made it in both film and music. Is it like over in Japan or like in other countries, is it very much like you can only be in like one field or the other? If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Um, kind of. It's like I said, people get very wrapped up in the parasocial relationships. Even like J-pop or K-pop idols. If your fans find out that, you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you're done. You know, you see the same thing kind of happen with Mima in the movie where she starts, branching into more adult content, and it kind of ruins her image for fans. Well, it seems like most of her fans are kind of like accepting of it and supporting her, but you got people like Mimania, who are super fans and are super obsessed that go to extreme lengths. You see the same thing with people like manga artists. They do something that they write one chapter that they don't like and they get death threats on Twitter and stuff. It's very insane. The entertainment industry is very crazy in Japan.
I think we see even a little bit of that here. So like we have like an
Mhm.
inkling, like we're a couple weeks away from the Flash, and the Flash when it comes to DC for so long, I mean that was Zack Snyder's like bread and butter. Like that was what he did from Man of Steel, BVS, Justice League, like, and like you look at some of that fandom, and you know basically like they bullied and like rallied to a degree to where like we eventually got the Snyder cut of Justice League.
Right.
Even like
They
the
fixed
the
Sonic
this
too.
yeah, Sonic was another one I was gonna say is like you essentially bullied a studio into having that. And I think in this day and age with social media, you're experiencing that we can do a lot of good, but oftentimes like I said earlier, like there's almost this sense of entitlement to where like
Mm.
Me Mania, where the scene in particular where he's getting ready to like reenact the rape scene that she shot, and he is essentially like saying like, you've deflowered Mima. Like you have or Mima is what she went by. The pop version of Mima is like I think it's like Me Marion or something like that.
I don't
Um
remember.
yeah, like you essentially like you've deflowered this innocence, and you've taken from it when it essentially at the same time like you have that mental health of that performer that's at the heart. Like they don't want to be that singular image for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And but at the same time, like we have this tendency just to focus on what we want. And so you have stories and interactions where you have Mima and Mimania that are, have this sense of entitlement that like I am owed this. And that is very far from the truth.
Right. You see the same thing with bands in the scene. Like one of the biggest examples of this is Bring Me the Horizon, right? Bring Me the Horizon started off as a deathcore band, and then they've been slowly, um, they turned into metalcore, and then they started incorporating pop into their music, and everyone started, you know, kind of talking trash online, like, oh, they sold out or whatever. But look at them now, like they're huge, and they just dropped a song with Lil Uzi Vert, like.
Yeah.
It's insane. So us as fans, a lot of the time we try to, I guess hold on to what we know. People generally don't like change, I guess. at the expense of, other people's happiness for some reason. Like you
Well,
said, it's just a sense of entitlement.
here's the thing is that change is scary and we fear the
Hmm.
unknown. So like
Right.
any times that like you are moving from artistry, I think in metalcore is a great example. Is Bring Me the Horizon is a terrific example when you go back and you listen to their first stuff. I mean, like they are heavy and then they are just evolving as artists. And there
Right.
has to be this allowance to say, we respect you enough as people to grow in your artistry. Because if you're true fans of art, then you're going to love them no matter what. Like Under Oath is a really big band for me. They were one of the big like first bands I like heavy bands I got into, and they're still to this day my favorite bands. And when they broke up and came back, like, when Aaron left, they did Disambiguation, and Disambiguation was so vastly different from anything they had done before, and Erase Me felt like kind of a continuation of that. And then, Voirus, which was what they put out last year, but there's an evolution to that. And like it's taken
Right.
me a lot of years to kind of like really respect and reflect that growth of artistry. But in here with Perfect Blue, like that's one of the things that I really loved about how this film explores that artistry evolution because, you know, especially when you go into this very clean, very sanitized world of pop music, and then you're going into more daring genre pushing roles in acting, that pop image that you once had is bound to be tarnished because you're evolving as an entertainer and as a person.
Right. And to me, I was thinking about it today. It's kind of interesting to see because, this film was made in 1997, right? That's when I was born. And looking at the world now, it's the complete opposite. I feel like it would have the complete opposite effect what Mima did. Um, because now you see that, when people or artists or, models, you know, just influencers in general, they're doing their thing and then they'll branch out into more adult content. Let's say they start like an OnlyFans or something. They blow up, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just a little interesting comparison into, I guess, the times. Maybe back then stuff like that wouldn't really fly and it wouldn't be as accepted or supported, but now it's kind of like a fast way to get super famous. So that's just an interesting comparison I made in my head.
Yeah, or you like find a way to like reinvent yourself. Bella Thorne, I
Right,
think, is a great example of that, where
right.
she got her start doing Disney. She did really wholesome roles and then slowly kind of trickled out. And now she's like a mainstay in the horror realm to where like
Right.
a lot of what she does, if almost all of what she does is like horror films from Babysitter on Netflix to even Scream for MTV. Like he's
Same with
really
Jenna Ortega.
yeah, she got her start on Disney and now she's like a legitimate Scream queen from X to Scream to Wednesday. Like it's all about like reinventing. And I think we're open a little bit now more so to the idea of reinvention if it is like a complete 180 to
Right.
where you were known for this thing, but now you're doing this genre or you're doing this piece of entertainment. And I think it's also really fascinating. You brought up OnlyFans. I think it's really fascinating whenever something more adults or more sex driven is involved, because then you're really reinventing yourself and you're trying everything and your path to kind of really tarnish that. And it felt like really that's a lot of what Mima's trying to do in this. To where like there's that scene where they're talking about her and her agents are talking about whether or not she should do this rape scene. And she's
Right.
like, well, if you do it, it'll advance this career. And, you have one agent that's like, I think it's a good idea. You have the other one that's like, no. And then it's one of the most uncomfortable scene, if not the most uncomfortable scene to watch in this movie. And like he's aggressively like on board for it. And there's a montage later in the movie where she's doing like nude modeling. And she says a line in here that I think is really interesting where she says that this image is suffocating me. And
Mm,
you can see that she really wants that idea of growth. I think not only from an artistry standpoint at the same time, but also from a just a humanity thing of wanting to grow as a person. Because I don't know how many people, I don't want to say that. I think that there are people that have a tendency to stay comfortable rather than growth. And the people
right,
that stay comfortable always kind of feel just not the greatest. Like there's always like that mental health battle that they're struggling with because instead of enduring the pain, they're running away from
right. That's a pretty deep connection.
it.
That's a deep cut. But yeah, I think one something my pastor said one Sunday was it was something about movement. If you're stagnant, oh man, I can't remember what he said. But if I remember it, I'll bring it back up. But it correlates so much with what you just said.
Well, I think it
I don't
like,
know.
even even to come out from like, depending on what you believe, like there's a
Right.
passage, one of Paul's writings where he talks about perseverance make builds character and character gives us
Mm,
hope. I'm
right.
probably butchering that order, but it's like kind of this like train of events that like if we persevere and if we are willing to like buckle down in the sand and willing to make those sacrifices, then what we're going to end up getting in the turn is not only uh hope in the long run, but also at the end you're going to uh have a story that's going to connect you to a larger piece. And like I I don't know. I mean, we know each other through Instagram primarily.
Right.
So like we're not like deep deep buds and kind of stuff like this, but like so much of my story and like my testimony of like how I'm still alive today comes from enduring these really heavy seasons of depression and grief and loss. And I think that when you have stories like that, not only are they worth listening to because you never know when it's going to connect to your own story one day, but also at the same time, it reminds you that you're not alone.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I also have a story like that where, the struggle with depression almost took me out, but I'm still here and now I can channel those experiences into something positive like music that people can relate to and find hope and comfort in. And when relating it back to the movie, when you kind of see artists these days struggling. A lot of artists are dying very young. I think of like someone like Juice World, so young. I think he had just turned 21 or something, one of the greatest freestylers to ever walk this earth. And he lost his battle to depression essentially. He would try to drown it out with drugs and it ended up killing him. So instead of ridiculing people that you see struggling, it's best to just offer love and support because you never know what someone's going through. Just like Mima in the movie, she was struggling internally, mentally, and instead of her number one fan sending positive messages, he would like send death threats to the company, and they just started killing people to get what they want instead of being sensitive to their idol per se. People
Yeah.
are more worried about themselves and what they want. And disregard people's feelings, and that's why we have tragedies.
That's such a loaded statement to before I read I want to read this real quick. The correct thing is because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. Comes from Romans 5. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting. When we did, I think it was last year, we covered Pam and Tommy on the Victims and Villains feed. Which is like the explorate like is like the events of like you know Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee having the sex tape stolen from them and kind of the events that played out. One of the things that I think that series did really well, and um even Netflix did a documentary at the beginning of this year called Pamela Love Story, where it showcased how events like that really had like a you kind of get to see this like really vulnerable side of Pamela and kind of like hear her thing and talking about specifically about how, it kind of really made her feel. And the fact that Me Mania is kind of portraying this image that is kind of like what he wants to see versus like the actual reality. It is, I think, goes back to like on the flip side of that, like those that are in fame and those that are going through the limelight and kind of the mental health aspects of it, like how that really messes with them. Um, one of the three constant examples that I always come back to is Robin Williams, Chester Bennington, and Chris Cornell. And even Kurt Cobain, for those of us that grew up in the 90s, like these were four people at the top of their game that had adoring fans from literally all over the world, and their depression got the best of them
Mm.
because of, X, Y, or Z reasons. I wasn't there, you weren't there. Uh, but at the same time, like we always kind of feel like as the consumers of the entertainment, we always feel like we have the right answer. We know what's going to be right. And the thing about that you have to understand is that that's an actual person that is creating that art.
Right.
And your words, your actions, your threats, etc., they have implications on their mental health and also how they are seen as an individual.
One character that we haven't spoken on yet is the manager, Rumi, who is
Yes.
maybe an even bigger force of just perversion and I don't know, just mental instability in the movie. And
When
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say before we even like jump into like her as like a character and some of her mental health journeys, like that was just absolutely one of the wildest twists in this movie. And I was just kind of like, there's there's no way. No. No, come on.
It came so out of left field. That one caught me off guard for sure.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Her character is I think she has a lot to do also with some of I think she kind of takes Me Mania's ideologies a little bit to the extreme in some aspects.
Right.
Um, and it is kind of really heartbreaking because in some ways it kind of almost feels like I can't speak to it because I'm just a nobody from Virginia, but uh like people that put their kids through like entertainment, and like I've read a lot of stories
Hmm.
about that. I've gone down through some like rabbit holes of like, Amanda Bynes, like Christy Carlson Romano has been a powerhouse voice. I
Jeanette
kind of like
McCurdy.
Jeanette McCurdy, like her book last year, like just reading it like tore me apart. Um, but I think that they are both. I think all of those stories, like we see, kind of like with the Rumi character, to where she thinks she knows better, and like really at the end of the day, like it goes back to like allowing your story to kind of be made. And like I think to a degree, like do you have to kind of let off, especially Mima's case where she's a grown woman. at this point.
Right. And it even goes deeper than that because the whole thing with Rumi is she is not satisfied with her life. She was a former idol. She had her glory days or whatever, but she's still stuck in the past and she's trying to live vicariously through Mima. And that's why she's kind of like trying to groom her and mold her into, this path so that she can continue living her glory days vicariously through her, which is sick and twisted in a different way. But we see a lot of that in those cases, like you mentioned, with these child actors and their parents putting them into this industry because they
Yeah,
couldn't do it themselves.
I don't, I, I don't know what side to believe, but a few years ago, Shia LaBeouf wrote a movie called Twenty Boy, and it was supposedly about like his like time making Even Stevens and kind of like how his dad was like really basically like rode him hard to be like the best entertainer, kind of like lived his like failed dreams of stardom through his son vicariously. And LaBeouf has kind of gone on record saying that that wasn't true, blah blah blah. Anyways, I use that as like an example because like at that point you are also like really hurting, really damaging your own child's mental health because in that way, like their best is never good enough. And I don't care. Like I've never met celebrity parents or stuff like that, but like I have seen the way that like student athletes were treated in high school,
Mm,
where it seemed like their best was like never enough, no matter how perfect of a game they played or how many goals they scored or baskets they dunked. Like it never seemed like their best was good enough.
right. They just can never live up to the expectation. And that's impossible. You can never live up to somebody else's expectation. And another thing that like kills me about these scenarios, I think it was Dylan and Cole Sprouse recently spoke about, how they got into acting, and it was the same thing. I think it was their mom who was a failed actress, basically put them into acting to, fulfill her dreams. And their first role was some weird movie where I think it was Cole as like a tiny little boy had to like it was kind of similar to Mima. I don't know if it was like a rape scene or something, but they had him like dress up as a girl or whatever. He was like kidnapped. It was just weird, to put a little boy through a role like that. It was very perverted. And for you as a parent to allow your child to be exploited like that, to live out your fantasies is very deranged. And it obviously has a huge impact on the child's development. And they're now surrounded by all these terrible influences in Hollywood, subject to things like, molestation and grooming and stuff like that. And these kids eventually go off the rails. Thankfully, they haven't gone too far, but we have countless examples of, child celebrities who have gone off the rails because of trauma that they've experienced in this industry.
Yeah, and that's one of the most heartbreaking things I think about like growing up in like the 90s. I loved a lot of like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney. Those were like my cornerstone like growing up. And like going back and like hearing some of the stories now, especially in the wake of Jeanette McCurdy's book, there's just like some like truly heartbreaking like things that I've come across from like cast members that used to be on like all that to like some of
Yeah.
Disney's working conditions. And it's really heartbreaking. And I wouldn't encourage anyone that like if you've never listened to it, Vulnerable, Christy Carlson Romano's podcast is a great podcast to listen to. Because she's had a lot of these like conversations about what it's like to growing up in Hollywood, like how it messes with like your mental health, like your self-image, your self-esteem. And I think like to a degree, like even like average Joes like us, like and Jane's, we know what it's like because like we're like there are some of us that are always like maybe we don't have the limelight, but we're always looking for affection from like an abusive parent or approval from a dismissive spouse or a partner. That number comes in and goes in ways, and so I think there are so many of us that like can relate to Mima's story. Maybe not, maybe that's Mima's story is an extreme, but we've felt like lesser degrees of that, and like we've also had to like step back and like find our own voice and our own identity and ask like, all right, like who am I? Like what brings me joy? What gives me the serotonin lifts? What has the all of these journeys done for my own mental health?
Right. And then it's important to find positive ways to get that serotonin and dopamine, because people that endure trauma often, look for those things in the wrong places, and it ends up being detrimental to themselves and to people around them. So it's just a whole chain reaction um, from situations like that. It's very tragic.
Yeah, and I also think that it goes to finding like healthy areas of where you can find serotonin.
Right.
Like you brought up the like the metalcore scene. And kind of like the scene I've been listening to this music since I was 13. And like I've always felt welcome into that area regardless of like what other music I listen to. And the same for like the horror community. I love, or even the Comic-Con community. I love attending conventions and I love going to film festivals and talking with other people about like what they're watching or how they got involved into the genre, and it's or what they're reading and what kind of animes they like or what kind of video games they're playing. Like even if I'm not like in those arenas, like they're always like fascinating conversations to have. And you find what you'll find a lot of times is that you're enclosed and you're among people that you really like, and it's awesome. But again, it's about that finding that healthy serotonin as well.
Right. And like I said earlier, for me, that's music, that's paradigms. Um, and that's why, again, that's why we do what we do, in order to share our stories and, you know, make a positive of what may have been negative in the past.
Yeah, that's a great example too, taking something that once was a negative in your life and like transforming it into a positive. And I think that kind of goes back into that whole idea of like never discounting your story. I
Right.
think that's one of the most satisfying things about how this film ends is that Mima kind of has this whole like really tragic like climactic battle with Rumi, and it's revealed that like she's been like this like shadow or like messing with her this whole time. And then at the end like she's kind of like she's completely like looks brand new, like her hair's grown out, she's wearing sunglasses, and like there's a point where she passes by two people and they're like, oh man, isn't this like this pop star, this like, and she's like, nah, it couldn't be.
It can't
And then
be. Why would she be here?
yeah, she gets in the car at the end and you just kind of see her, and you just kind of see that like she's happy because she's kind of taken this
Hmm.
like really negative intense battle that she had going on and like has really kind of transformed it into finally finding peace and peace for what it means for her. How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Right. And at that moment, she looks in the mirror and she says, "No, I'm real." And that kind of like put the icing on the cake. That lets you know that even through all that mess she went through, she was able to, find that light at the end of the tunnel. And you could also infer that her career probably went really well after that because now people are recognizing her in public, you know? So she's probably doing very well. And she's just come to terms with everything. She even, thanked Rumi. She was like, I wouldn't be who I am today if it weren't for her. So, and I feel the same way about, the struggles that I've gone through. I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through the things that I went through, and made it through. Because like you
Yeah,
said, like Paul said, perseverance builds character, and character builds hope.
yeah, it's one of those things too that like I'm similarly the same situation, man. Like I've gone through some like really tough, really tough things in my life, and I wouldn't change any of that stuff because it's made me who I am today. It's given me a passion for mental health, for horror,
Mm,
for people outside the church, like, really wanting to bring a lot and have these very real conversations because I think that they're really important. And there's another scene in this movie that I think was really encouraging was the scene where he is she's feeding her fish like early on in the movie, and it's right before she discovers that they're dead. But you just see that there's this joy just from being around like her fish. And
right.
I think it goes back to that, like just finding joy in the little things in life because you never know or never understand like where that joy is going to come from.
Right. What's your little thing that brings you joy in life?
God, that's such a loaded question. Probably my wife, honestly.
Oh my God.
I love being able to just kind of like make her laugh and like there's like no expectations. Like I'm able to be like vulnerable and like silly and serious, like all within that same like time frame. And like again, like I think once we've been married for 9 years now, and so it's always been like she's been like a person that like I don't have to like be a podcast host or like a writer or poet or anything else that I do creatively. Like I can just be like myself. And it's been the kind of
Word.
one thing that like I love. I know you brought up music. Do you have like any other like little joys that like bring you life?
A little platter of extra sharp cheddar cheese with
Nice.
some dry aged salami, a cup of red
Okay.
wine while playing Minecraft. It's heaven, dude.
That sounds like that sounds
It's so
awesome, dude.
therapeutic. So therapeutic.
Get to be fancy and also an architect in the same breath. That's amazing.
Right, exactly.
Man, I will never forget the first time that I saw someone play Minecraft. Uh I we were doing an event, speaking engagement at a church down south, and the guy we were staying with was playing Minecraft, and he was like it's like Uncle Sam get up and just like building stuff, and I was like, this is just what am I watching right now? Like it just feels like I just took like a whole bunch of drugs and I'm just seeing like random things pop up, and people assure me that that's normal in Minecraft, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Cool, cool."
Yeah, I mean, to me, I like playing survival mode. But it's just a calm setting. The music is calm, even though sometimes, most of the times, I turn off the music and I just let my playlist go. Um, but it's just like I like to zone out and like just do repetitive tasks and like just like systems. So whenever I play with a group, I'm always a person that goes underground and mines and finds the gold and the diamond because I have a system going. And that's where I thrive. I just zone out. I do my system, in an orderly fashion, and it just feels nice for my brain. I'm able to relax because I'm a person, I have depression and anxiety, and my brain is always going a million miles an hour. But when I'm able to just focus on one task and like just zone in on that, then everything in here is quiet, and then you just feel that peace, and I get my serotonin.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's something that's like been really valuable. Like I've been getting more into reading lately.
Mm,
Where I went through a season where I was like, I just movies drowning out, but like just being able to like step into like a silly, ridiculous like comic book or a story that is like adventurous and thrilling. Like I think that just being able to that feeling of like exploration and like not having any expectations, like you talk about like Minecraft from like what I know is like this like very open world. So you're kind of it's just
right,
constant exploration. And I think that's just being able to just like let go and like not have any expectations, not have any deadlines or demands or anyone else. It's just you, the computer, or you in the book, or you in the whatever. There's something otherworldly about that because it just allows you to just go and just absolutely just find peace and silence.
right.
I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of Abyss Gazing. But one more time, Josh, where can people find you online?
You could find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all that stuff. PRDGMS.NYC. Paradigms.NYC. We got merch. We got updates on shows. Keep your eyes peeled. We got some heat coming for you guys soon.
I'm I am so excited to hear more from you guys. You guys can find me. I'm on Letterboxd at Captain Nostalgia. You guys can find us wherever you guys get your podcasts from. Just search Abyss Gazing. That's all. You guys click the links in the show notes below to not only follow Paradigms on their social medias, but also at the same time to check out our companion episode to this one from our friends over at Animinds. You guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you guys get your podcasts from. We're leaving you guys this week with the single Stains, as previously mentioned. This is Paradigms. And remember, the longer that you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.